Hello, I want to give you some ideas how to better do this um, critical response. And I want to start with the piece you're writing about. You should be doing your critical response about the soulmate myth. And your job there is to do a summary, followed by several paragraphs where you are bringing forth accurately Bonnie Christian's ideas, and you're going to use quoting and paraphrase to make her ideas plain. And then you're going to make your response to those specific ideas plain. And a common problem in doing this sort of writing is looking at the text and, first of all, misunderstanding what's in the text because of not understanding what's being said in the larger context of what's being said. What I'm getting at is, for example, you might be tempted to take this idea. She mentions marriage is more mundane than all that. Well, if you just read that sentence, it seems to be saying something negative about marriage. It's horrible, it's boring, whatever. And if you think that and then respond to that notion, you have misunderstood, ultimately misinterpreted what Bonnie Christian is actually saying about marriage. You have to look at the larger context to understand, and you have to make sure when you're presenting these specifics from an author that you put it in the correct context. You need to do some of your own thinking and writing around it, not just dump it out there and expect it to make sense. She's not saying marriage is mundane. It's tied, marriages are more mundane than all that. What's all that? Well, the preceding paragraph really gets into it. She mentions contrary to conventional wisdom, the latter approach is the more practical. The latter approach she's referring to is marriage. She's saying that marriage is actually more practical than living together. And she goes on to state, because the mutual inquisition living together entails is a fool's errand. She's already established that when you're living together, it's really to find out about the other person. And she calls that a mutual inquisition. I'm living with somebody, she's living with me, and we're trying to find out, is this person the right one? Well, she calls that a fool's errand. She says it seeks a romantic perfection that does not exist. Remember, she said the soulmate is a myth. It buys into the myth of the soulmate. And now she's being very clear. Earlier I mentioned you might have different ideas about the soulmate, but here she is specifically saying what she says about the soulmate. And you might have a different idea what soulmate is, and that could be a portion of your response, certainly. But she says the myth of the soulmate is that there's one perfect person out there for each of us, a magical someone who fits our every whim. That's juvenile nonsense bordering on delusional, a sure route to dissatisfaction. Expecting this sort of perfection puts marriage on an absurd pedestal. We may feel it unattainable. I can never find that perfect soulmate. I'll never have that perfect relationship, right? Or our entirely acceptable relationship is settling, and yet simultaneously valleys it each day. Or we either find ourselves never finding our soulmate because it's perfection, or if we're in as she calls it, a perfectly acceptable relationship that isn't that perfection up on the pedestal, she says that's fine. Now, that's what she means when she says marriage is more mundane than all that. Okay? It's fine to find out after the wedding that your spouse has some irritating quirk. Oh, I thought this was my soulmate. He's supposed to be perfect. Or she's supposed to be perfect, whatever. That's not a reason to put off commitment with all this endless dithering about compatibility. It's okay if you don't have a grand or unique love story. Most of us don't. It's totally normal to be married, and then we might bicker about how different. Normal to be married who doesn't share your views on housework. I am, and we bicker about it sometimes, and then we might bicker about how different our bickering styles are, and none of this is a big deal. The idea of ending my marriage over dishes is so stupid I can't even contemplate it. Were my husband twice as messy as he is, we'd still be just married as we are. Perfect compatibility is neither possible nor necessary for a successful relationship. She has some pretty good ideas here. And I ask that you engage with these ideas. They are not conventional wisdom. But as you're doing that, read the whole essay. This is scuba diving reading, not jet ski reading, where you really have to dive in multiple times. You should be marking the text. Make sure you understand what she's saying, because she has some ideas you're free to disagree with, but make sure you're disagreeing with what she's actually presenting. You might think that there's a soulmate there for you. Well, maybe you're misunderstanding what her idea of a soulmate is. I mean, really, the idea that there's one perfect person somewhere out there, I agree with her, man. That is delusional. That's just crazy, man. Anyway, that's my opinion and it's hers. Just make sure you understand her opinion. I mean, do you have a soulmate? Well, I consider my wife my soulmate. But she isn't perfect for me in that she, I'll just leave it at that. It's been 36 years. I love the woman. I just leave it at that. Go ahead and engage this. Hopefully this soulmate myth will give you some good things to write about. It might even give you some ideas to live about. And we'll take it from there. In the next video, I want to get into some more structural concerns, we might say. So go to that. Hopefully you're ready to move on. Talk to you in a minute.